I stood in the middle of the street and watched everything I had left burn to the ground. The flames roared like a living beast, hungry and relentless, consuming the remains of my past life. I could feel the searing heat on my face, smell the thick, choking smoke curling into the night sky, hear the sirens wailing in the distance like a mournful chorus. But I didn't run. I didn't cry. I just stood there because, for the first time in my life, I had nothing left to lose. The fire wasn't the first thing to take everything from me. Life had already stripped me bare, leaving me with nothing but memories and the weight of my own pain. I used to have a home, a family, a life that was worth living. My wife, Maria, was my heart. Her laughter filled our house like music. Her smile could brighten even the darkest of days. And my little boy, Elijah, was my world. He would sit on my lap while I played my guitar, his tiny fingers tracing the strings as he rested his head against my chest, whispering, "Daddy, don't ever stop singing." I thought we had forever. I thought we had time. But life has a cruel way of taking the things you love most and leaving you with nothing but sorrow. 8 years ago, Maria got sick. Cancer. The word itself felt like a death sentence. We had insurance. We did everything right. But when the bills piled too high, the company dropped us like we were nothing. Exceeded policy limits, they said. Just like that. I worked 3 jobs, sold my truck, my guitar, anything of value, just to keep her alive. But it wasn't enough. Then, as if the universe hadn't punished me enough, Elijah got sick too. A rare disease the doctors caught too late. I buried my wife. I buried my son. And the weight of the debt they left behind buried me. The bills didn't stop when they died. The calls didn't stop. The bank didn't stop. But for some reason, they never took the house. Maybe they forgot about me. Maybe I wasn't worth the trouble. For 7 years, I lived in that house, a ghost in my own life. The power got shut off. The water stopped running. But I still had walls around me, a roof over my head. And that was enough, until the fire came. I woke up to sirens screaming. The sky wasn't black, it was red. Flames swallowed the houses down the block, a hungry inferno devouring everything in its path. It was coming straight for me. I grabbed what little I had left, a few clothes, the only picture I had of Maria and Elijah, my old guitar. But before I could even make it to the door, the heat was already at my back. By the time I got out my house, the last thing I had left was gone. And the worst part? The bank still didn't care. The insurance company I had fought to get coverage from after they dropped me found a loophole, some technicality buried in the fine print. No payout, no help, no home. Just like that, I was back on the streets. For the past 3 weeks, I've been sleeping under freeway bridges, singing for scraps on the sidewalk, just like I did when I had nothing. People walked past, barely sparing a glance, tossing coins in my empty guitar case like they're feeding a stray dog. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Fire can take your home. Life can take your family. It can burn everything you've ever known down to the ground. But the one thing it can't take is your voice. That's why I'm here tonight. Not for pity, not for sympathy. I'm here to sing. Because no matter how many times life knocks you down, no matter how much you've lost, as long as you can still breathe, you can still fight. As long as you can still stand, you're not done yet. So I strum my guitar, letting my fingers dance over the worn strings. The melody flows through me, raw and unfiltered, carrying with the weight of my pain and the whisper of hope buried deep within me. I close my eyes and let my voice rise into the cold night air. Born to fly, but I've fallen down, carrying dreams to a shattered town, a mangled body, a fractured soul, searching for light in a world so cold. Every scar, every tear is a hymn, a melody rising from within. They tried to bury me, but here I stand, a broken man with a mic in hand. As my voice fills the empty streets, I know one thing for sure. I am still here. I am still singing. And as long as I can sing, I am still alive. The first night on the streets is the hardest. You don't know where to go, where to sleep, or how to survive. Hunger gnaws at you like a living thing. The cold seeps into your bones. The world looks at you, but doesn't see you. You become invisible, just another shadow among the ruins of the city. I remember sitting on the curb that night, my guitar case open in front of me, waiting for something, anything. I strummed a tune, my fingers moving instinctively, playing a song that had no words, only the echoes of my pain. People passed by, their faces a blur of indifference. Some tossed coins without looking. Others avoided me altogether, like I was a ghost they didn't want to acknowledge. I wasn't angry. I understood. No one wants to see what they could become if life decided to be cruel. As the hours dragged on, exhaustion pulled at me. But I couldn't sleep. The streets weren't safe. Not for someone like me. The other homeless men and women huddled in alleyways, wrapped in whatever scraps of warmth they could find. Some muttered to themselves. Others lay motionless, lost in dreams of another life. A few watched me with wary eyes. It wasn't long before I learned the unspoken rules of the streets. Rule 1, trust no one. People will take from you before they offer anything. The world had already stripped me down to nothing, but nothing was still something, and there were those who would steal the last breath from your lungs if they could. Rule 2, keep moving. The longer you stay in one place, the more you become a target. I found that out the hard way on my second night, when a man tried to take my guitar. He came at me with wild eyes, desperate and hungry. I fought him off, but not without taking a few blows. After that, I learned to stay light, to keep my possessions close, and to never, ever let my guard down. Rule 3, the streets have a memory. People talk. They remember who gives and who takes. If you cross the wrong person, you might not see another sunrise. If you help someone, they might help you when you least expect it. That's how I met a man named Hector. Hector had been on the streets for years. He had the look of someone who had seen too much, but his eyes were kind. He found me sitting on a park bench one morning, shivering from the cold, my stomach hollow with hunger. Without a word, he handed me half a sandwich. "You play?" he asked, nodding toward my guitar. I nodded. "Sing something," he said. So I did. I played a song I had written for Maria, back when life still had warmth. The melody hung in the crisp morning air, wrapping around the broken buildings, seeping into the cracks of the pavement. Hector listened, his head nodding along to the rhythm. When I finished, he clapped once and said, "That voice of yours, that's going to keep you alive." I didn't believe him then. I thought he was just being kind. But I was wrong. Hector taught me the ways of the street, where to find food, which places gave out blankets, which corners were best for playing music. He told me which cops would run you off and which ones might slip you a few dollars when no one was looking. He showed me how to disappear when I needed to, how to blend into the background when trouble came looking. For weeks, we moved together, two ghosts wandering the city, surviving one night at a time. He became my friend, my only friend, and for a while that was enough. Until the night everything changed. It was cold, colder than usual, the kind of cold that cuts through your clothes, through your skin, straight to your bones. Hector and I had found a spot beneath an overpass, a small fire burning between us. We were sharing a bottle of cheap whiskey, trying to chase away the chill, when a group of men appeared from the shadows. They weren't like the others. They weren't just looking for a place to sleep. They were looking for something else. "Got anything worth taking?" One of them asked, his eyes flicking to my guitar. I felt my heart hammer against my ribs. I knew this kind of man. I had seen him before. Desperate, dangerous. Hector stood up slowly, his hands raised. "We got nothing, man. Just trying to stay warm." The leader of the group smirked. "That's so." Without warning, he lunged, a flash of metal, a grunt of pain. Hector staggered back, clutching his side, blood blooming between his fingers. Rage surged through me. Without thinking, I swung my guitar, the wood splintering against the man's shoulder. He stumbled, cursing, but his friends were already on me. Fists rained down, boots slammed into my ribs. The world spun, pain exploding in every nerve of my body. Then, suddenly, they were gone. I don't know how long I lay there, staring at the underside of the overpass, my breath coming in ragged gasps. When I finally managed to sit up, Hector was slumped against the wall, his breathing shallow. I crawled to him, my hands shaking. Stay with me, man. Stay with me. He coughed, a weak smile tugging at his lips. Told you, that voice of yours gonna keep you alive. His eyes fluttered closed, and just like that, he was gone. I sat there for hours, my body too broken to move, my mind too shattered to think. By the time the sun rose, Hector's body was cold. I didn't know what to do, so I did the only thing I could. I picked up my guitar, or what was left of it, and I walked away. I walked until my legs gave out. I walked until the city blurred into a haze of buildings and noise. I walked until I found myself in front of an old church, its stained glass windows glowing in the morning light. I don't know why I went inside. Maybe I was looking for something. Hope, redemption, a reason to keep going. I sat in the back row, the air thick with the scent of burning candles and old wood. My hands trembled as I strummed the broken strings of my guitar. And then, for the first time in weeks, I sang. No legs to walk, but I found my stride in every song my heart can fight. The streets are hard, but they're home to me, a stage where pain becomes poetry. My voice cracked, raw and unsteady, but I kept singing, because as long as I could sing, I wasn't done yet. The church became my refuge, if only for a short while. It was nothing special, just an old building with creaking wooden pews, and a draft that made the candles flicker. But it was quiet, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe without looking over my shoulder. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't pray. I just sat in the back, playing what was left of my guitar, letting the broken notes drift into the empty space around me. The weight of everything pressed down on my chest, heavier than ever. The memories of Maria, Elijah, and now Hector clung to me like ghosts that refused to leave. One morning, a man sat beside me. He was older, dressed in a faded brown suit, his face lined with years of hardship. You sing with the kind of pain most folks spend their whole lives running from, he said, his voice low and knowing. I didn't answer. The world ain't done with you yet, son, he continued. You got a gift, and gifts ain't meant to be buried. I turned to him then, meeting his steady gaze. A gift? I lost everything. I got nothing left. The old man nodded, as if he understood. Then you got nothing left to fear. His words stayed with me long after he left. I didn't know what to do with them, but I couldn't shake them. So that night I walked. I wandered through the city streets, my footsteps echoing in the alleys, past neon signs flickering against the darkness. My stomach ached from hunger, my body sore from sleeping on cold pavement. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving, I was searching. I found myself in front of a bar, the kind of place where the walls were stained with cigarette smoke, and the floors were sticky with spilled beer. A neon sign buzzed above the door, casting a dull glow over the sidewalk. Inside, a man sat on a small stage, strumming a guitar, his voice lost in the hum of conversation. I watched him, my fingers itching to play, to let the music carry the weight inside me somewhere else. Anywhere else. When his set ended, I approached the bartender. You let people play here? He gave me a once-over, eyes lingering on my torn clothes and the battered guitar slung over my shoulder. You any good? I didn't answer. I just walked to the stage, sat down on the stool, and let my fingers find the strings. I played without thinking, without planning. The melody poured out of me, raw and unfiltered, each note a piece of my past. The room quieted, the hum of conversation fading as people turned to listen. Then I sang. Wheels creep beneath me. Scars define my skin. But every song I sing is where hope begins. I in the cracks of the pavement. Beauty grows, a testament to the strength of all I know. I sang for Maria, for Elijah. I sang for Hector and every lost soul that had been forgotten by the world. I sang for myself, for the pieces of me I had left behind. And for the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me, something that hadn't been there in a long, long time. Hope. When I finished, there was silence. Then applause. A few people tossed bills into my open guitar case. Not just coins, but bills. Enough for food. Enough for a bed and a shelter, if I wanted it. I nodded my thanks and stepped off the stage. The bartender stopped me as I passed. You come back tomorrow, he said. Got a feeling people are going to want to hear more of that. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and left. That night, I bought a warm meal for the first time in weeks. A burger, fries, a hot cup of coffee that burned my tongue but tasted like salvation. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, letting the warmth spread through me. I thought about Hector, about the old man in the church, about Maria and Elijah. I thought about how I had spent so long believing that I had nothing left. But maybe, just maybe, I still had something to give. The next night, I went back. And the night after that, the crowd grew. People started recognizing me, asking for songs, dropping folded bills into my case. The bartender started giving me free drinks, then a meal. One night, a man in a dark suit approached me after my set. He had sharp eyes and a confident air, the kind of person who knew his way around money. "You got talent, kid," he said, handing me a card. "I book acts for real venues. You ever think about playing somewhere bigger?" I took the card, running my fingers over the embossed letters. It felt heavy in my hands. "I don't know." He smiled. "Think about it." I did. That night, I lay on the cot at the shelter, staring at the ceiling. Was this it? Was this the moment where things changed? I was terrified. Terrified of hoping. Terrified of believing that I could be something more than a man who had lost everything. Because what if I tried and it all slipped away again? But then I thought about the music. The way it had pulled me through every storm, every loss. The way it had kept me breathing when nothing else had. And I knew I had to try. So I picked up my guitar, took a deep breath, and whispered the words that had carried me through the darkness for so long. Freedom rising on broken wings. Because I wasn't done yet. The first time I stepped onto a real stage, it didn't feel real. The lights, the crowd, the way the microphone hummed beneath my fingertips. It was like waking up from a dream I had long forgotten. A part of me still expected someone to tap me on the shoulder and tell me I didn't belong here, that I was still just another ghost wandering the streets, singing to no one. But when I played the first chord, when my voice filled the room, I knew I belonged here. The audience wasn't a sea of strangers. They were people who had lived through their own pain, their own losses. They listened not just with their ears, but with their hearts. And as I sang, I wasn't just telling my story. I was telling theirs too. Let the echoes ring out. Let them shatter the night. In the silence of fear, be the beacon of light. I'm no ghost. I'm no shadow. I'm no whisper in air. I'm the voice of survival. I'm the answer to prayer. Each note carried the weight of every night I had spent sleeping on cold concrete. Every punch I had taken. Every moment of hunger. Every tear I had refused to shed. The music turned my suffering into something more. Something that no fire, no loss, no cruel twist of fate could take from me. After the show, people came up to me. They wanted to shake my hand, tell me how my music had moved them. Some had tears in their eyes. Others just nodded, as if to say, I understand. I've been there, too. And then I saw him, a boy, no older than 10, standing near the back of the room, holding his father's hand. His dark eyes were wide, filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. He reminded me of Elijah. I knelt down so we were eye level. You like music? He nodded shyly. Yeah, my dad plays guitar, too. He says music can fix things. I smiled, swallowing the lump in my throat. Your dad's a smart man. The boy hesitated, then said, You don't look like someone who sings in big places. His father started to apologize, but I shook my head. The kid wasn't wrong. I still wore the same worn-out jacket, the same boots that had walked too many miles. I didn't look like the polished singers on television. I looked like a man who had barely survived. You know what? I said, You don't need fancy clothes or big stages to sing. All you need is a voice. And if you've got that, no one can take it from you. The boy grinned. Then I'm going to sing, too. I ruffled his hair and stood up, shaking his father's hand. Don't let him stop. No matter what. His father nodded. I won't. As they walked away, I felt something settle inside me. A kind of peace I hadn't known in years. The next few months were a blur. More shows, bigger venues. People started recognizing my name. A record label approached me with a contract, and for the first time in my life, I didn't have to fight to survive. I could finally start living. But I didn't forget where I came from. I went back to the church, the one where I had first started playing again. The old man in the faded brown suit was sitting in the same pew, as if he had been waiting for me. "Told you the world wasn't done with you," he said with a knowing smile. I laughed. "Guess not." I reached into my pocket and placed a small envelope beside him for the shelter, for the people still out there. He nodded, but he didn't open it. He just patted my shoulder. "You keep singing, son. Not just for yourself, but for them." And I did. I played shows, but I also played on the streets. I donated money, but I also donated time. I sat with people who had no one, listened to their stories, let them know they weren't invisible, because I knew what it felt like to be forgotten. One night, I stood on the rooftop of my new apartment, looking out at the city, the same city that had beaten me down, that had taken everything from me, that had left me with nothing, and yet I was still here. I picked up my new guitar, the one that replaced the one that had been shattered beneath an overpass, and I played, not for the fame, not for the money, but for the ones still out there, still fighting, still waiting for their moment to rise. They tried to break me, but here I stand, a broken body, but a steady hand on the voice in the dust. Don't forget my name, a melody of hope burning through the flame. And as the city lights shimmer below, I knew one thing for certain. I was born to fly. And no matter how many times I had fallen, I had finally learned how to rise.